you. Welcome to the regular city council meeting. Roll call, please.
Mayor Louis Trujillo,
Present.
Councilor David Romero,
Here.
Councilor Elaine Rodriguez,
Present.
Councilor Michael Montoya,
Present.
Councilor David Ulibarri Jr.
Here.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Do I have a quorum?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Elaine, would you like to lead us in a moment of reflection or silence?
Yes, I just want to, appreciate and thank all of the city workers, the mental health workers, and first responders during this time of increased COVID virus. I also want to ask the community as we go into the holidays to be very careful, to make sure you quarantine inside, wear your masks and use social distancing. Just make sure you consider yourself, your family, and people that you have to interact with, because we do not want to see increased coronaviruses or increased death. Thank you.
Thank you, Elaine.
Can Mayor make a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
There's a motion by Mr. Romero to approve the agenda. Second. Second by Mr. Ulibarri. All in favor?
Aye.
The motion carries. Next order of business.
Mr. Mayor, next order of business, public input. I do not have any public input at this time. So the next order of business are mayor appointments, reports, recognitions, and proclamations. Our first one is a proclamation for healthcare workers.
Thank you. And if you'll do the honors, Cassandra. Go ahead, Mr. Romero.
Okay, no, mind.
Mr. Romero, would you like to read the proclamation for the recognizing the healthcare workers?
No, I'll let you, Ms. Reno.
You all right? Okay. So I thought it would be fitting to recognize the healthcare workers in our community that have given themselves and their families to taking care of the sick in the community. And I think it's very fitting that we acknowledge their duty and their responsibility and their tirelessness and their just giving of all the themselves to taking care of people with COVID, getting people tested, taking care of them, and all this stuff. So without further ado, whereas during the COVID-19 pandemic, our healthcare workers have proven themselves to be not just essential workers, but frontline heroes. And whereas in responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, the challenges our frontline medical workers face on a regular basis have significantly intensified during these unprecedented times, often while having to isolate themselves from their families and their loved ones. And whereas our healthcare workers have been working tirelessly for months and risking their own safety to protect the community, and whereas the city of Las Vegas wishes to express their sincere, profound gratitude to our frontline medical workers, now therefore be it resolved by me, Louis Trujillo, Mayor of the City of Las Vegas, along with the members of the governing body, do hereby proclaim Friday, November 20th as Healthcare Heroes Days in our community in Las Vegas, New Mexico, and do hereby urge every resident to join me in taking time to acknowledge the selfless sacrifices of these healthcare workers during this day. Thank you so much. And once again, thank you to all the frontline healthcare workers and first responders, the ambulance people, the police officers, the fire department, the healthcare workers, hospital workers, social workers, everybody that's working so hard to keep our community healthy. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The next item is appointments to the following boards, commissions, advisory boards, and committees. And I don't know if you want to do one by one, go through each one.
Uh,
You have all the list of names that were included in your packet.
If you don't mind, I'd like to just approve them all at once, if you don't mind,
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Romero.
I had a couple questions as far as, and I know I was able to talk to our attorney, as far as the terms. I know in our charter, there's specifications as to, 4-year terms. He did mention that there really isn't any language in the charter that's, says that, they can serve more than one term. One question that I also had was, also in the charter, it says residency and district representation. And I just want to make sure that, and I know I kind of see here that there's some that I don't think meet that. I'm just wondering if we, whoever put this list together, if we made sure that the ward, in each board, there was one ward represented in every board.
I know that Ms. Loretta was the one who put the list together along with, I don't know, city manager, did you involved?
I assisted in some of them as well.
I have a question, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Montoya?
I don't see the finance committee here. Is that something coming later, or where are we on that?
So, Mr. Mayor, the Finance Committee will be proposed at the next meeting, and we've not had an active Finance Committee for years. So we're we're actually going out recruiting people, and we're running those things past the mayor, and so we plan to present that at the next meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I assume everybody here has been notified and agreed to.
That's my assumption, right? Loretta contacted them all?
I believe so.
Yeah.
Yes, you did.
Okay. And what about the other ones that were here? I mean, they were here and they're not on this list. Have they contacted them and let them know they're not longer going to be on there? Or was there any?
I believe everybody was contacted, Mr. Montoya.
Okay.
The other board that is not here, just for the record, is the Police Oversight Commission. And that is because there are some recommendations that are coming forth. And so that will be brought to council at a later date.
Okay, and I recommend, Mr. Mayor, that we do it all at once.
Okay?
So, Mr. Mayor, just clarification, so are we okay if every ward isn't represented?
Does every ward have to be represented on each committee, is what I'm asking, is what the question is.
It's on section 6.01, general provisions governing boards and commissions, under residency and district representation. It says regular members of boards and commissions shall be residents of the city, except as otherwise provided herein. Each board or commission shall have one member appointed from each council district. Should the member move out of district during his term, that member shall be automatically removed from office.
And I can't answer that right now. I can't answer if every ward is represented on every single committee. So if we want to table this action, we can. I can't verify that we have one person from every ward. Just know that in some of these committees, they're all hardworking people. I don't know, I can't tell you if they are indeed members from every single ward.
Mr. Mayor, can we go ahead and table this item till we get the police and finance?
I'll entertain a motion to table this item till we get the police and finance, and then to verify whether there's a representative from each ward.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Next order of business.
Mr. Mayor, you you have a report before we move on?
I do have a report. I would like to just let the business community know and our citizens of San Miguel County that we are having a emergency meeting tomorrow at 5 o'clock. The purpose of the emergency meeting is there's three items on the agenda, and one of them is to discuss the governor's order, new health order, to come up with ideas as to how we're going to enforce it, and to have a presentation by Dr. Ruth Watson from New Mexico Highlands University, do a presentation on a public awareness campaign that we're working on, so that that will include radio, newspaper, whatever, to get everybody in compliance and bring that local type of flavor to the governor's order. The third is the enforcement of the governor's order, where we are expected to talk about heavy enforcement by law enforcement, both city police and county, as well as looking at either reassigning people, new employees from the city and the county, or creating positions to assist with the oversight and the enforcement of the governor's order, as well as assisting with contact tracing. So that's the whole order of the business. The reason why this meeting has to come together is because as a city, we can do all that we can. If the high number of cases are occurring in the county, it becomes a county problem. And so the county of San Miguel has to step up, and we all have to come together. And in order to reopen our economy, we have to move from where we are today, from orange. We are orange as of today, 10 more cases. We don't want to wait till we're red to have to go back to orange or yellow. Right now, our goal is to get to yellow or possibly green within the time frame that the governor has established for us. Until we meet that criteria, we cannot open local economies. So that's why it's an emergency, and that is why it requires emergency action on both governing bodies level. So hopefully the meeting will go good tomorrow, and hopefully we move forward from that meeting with a good solid plan to include enforcement. A lot of community members have stressed to me, including people from the business community, that it's no time to be nice. Like, now we move into enforcement. Now is the time that we issue citations for everything, for the curfew, people not wearing masks, people gathering in large numbers, and that we move into strict enforcement by law enforcement. And that is what we are going to discuss tomorrow. The only way we're going to do this, we've had since March to make the public aware and to ask people to wear masks and all that stuff. I think now it requires some serious action, and so tomorrow we're going to just be discussing all that. That is the only way we can open our local economy. So the governor's office has put this on county level compliance, not just city. So this is county. So the entire county has to be in yellow in order for us to open up our businesses in town. If we are not yellow at the end of the governor's order, we do not open. So we'll be closed for 2 weeks. At the end of that time, if we are not in a yellow county, we will remain closed. And so our efforts are really going to be based on coming together, being creative, and to see how we're going to open our economy. Our local economy needs to be opened. Our restaurants need to be opened, our banks, everything needs to be open. All our stores need to be open, gift shops, everything, but not at the expense of lives. So until we get to that color, we cannot open any businesses, any economy in our city. So that's why I felt like it was an emergency and that we need to come together and meet. Again, we cannot open any of our local economy until the entire county goes to goes to yellow. If we are not at yellow at the end of the governor's order, we remain closed. And so it's having a big impact on our businesses and our local businesses. Some have decided to close. Talked to some shop owners today. So for the ones that have already closed, there are several of them that are thinking about closing up. It's very important that we address this. It's the lifeblood of our community. Small businesses have always been the backbone of our community, and we need to do everything we can to protect their longevity. So that's a reason why we're meeting tomorrow. Other than that, that's my report. Next order of business, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Are councilors' reports?
Yes, Dr. Rodriguez.
I'd like to bring up two items. One, William, maybe this is something you were going to do. I'd like to get an update on the homeless issue in regards to, we're still getting some concern about some of the homeless individuals getting into garages now that it's getting cold, and mainly in regards to senior citizens. So senior citizens are very vulnerable, and my concern is that we need to look at how that is impacting the senior citizens. And then the second thing I want to bring up is I really implore the council and the mayor to really consider moving to virtual meetings. And that way, it's not just protecting the council and mayor, but it's also protecting our city employees who are having to come to these meetings and present. At the last meeting, I was not able to come. I was sick. And when I was watching it, I noticed there was 3 to 4 people on the table and not social distancing. I'm really concerned that we're not following the restrictions, and we're supposed to be the role models for our community. And I know some individuals do not want to go virtual, and that's their choice, but I think we should have the option, not just for the mayor and council, but also for city employees who have to come and present. Possibly following the example of HUD. As we saw today, they were able to present via conference. Just the two things I have to bring up.
Thank you, Dr. Rodriguez. All I can tell you regarding the homeless is that the shelters are open. The homeless shelter is open. Since we've displaced people along the river, I think it's just a natural phenomenon in any community that these things occur. Once again, I would advise anybody with people with knowledge that if they know of people who are squatting or taking space in garages or empty houses, to call the police immediately, and we will handle it with law enforcement. As far as using our computers for meetings, we are working on that, and there will be a possibility that we could have a solution for our December meeting. Okay?
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Anybody else?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was a little bit disappointed myself on that presentation last meeting, but I did bring it before the city manager and our city clerk about just having one person present at each meeting, at each presentation, instead of various people. The other thing is I wanted to recognize is that New Mexico DOT has let go of has allowed the contractor for the welcoming sign that's going to be starting up now. The work started already up here on North Grand Avenue. That will say "Welcome to the City of Las Vegas." I don't know the time of completion. It all depends on the inclement weather. And the other thing is we met with Mora County Commissioner Veronica Serna, and they have set the date of December the 15th to do the RTD first run. And that's a bus that's coming in from Holman down to Mora and Cleveland, Sapeo, making stops in Walmart off the roadway. All of these stops will be off the roadways. They're going to stay off the parking lots. and LCC and MBHI, and then down to the plaza, and then also down to New Mexico Islands University, and then at the end of the day, they hit the train depot. They're going to start again with a small bus with no more than 4 passengers at a time and so forth. But kind of like the ribbon cutting or whatever you want to call it, groundbreaking for this project, it will be on December 15th, and they're going to have like so many people in every station. And I asked that mayor and council if you want to join at our stop on December the 15th. It'll be, I think, in 10:15 in the morning, I think. And we're going to extend our invitation to our Senator P. Campos. And DOT will be like in Sapeo, and others will be in different areas. The county will be in different areas too, so in different stops. But it's just that I mentioned that. Thank you, sir.
Do you know if the bus will be going through town in time to make people, in time for them to get to work? Like 7:45, will the bus?
I think there is a schedule, and that they might change that down the road.
Yeah.
They did do a dry run, but I think it starts off in Cleveland like about 7:45 in the morning.
So people won't be able to come to work on the bus?
I don't think so. I
Okay.
think it's, I guess if we have different classes at Luna, for instance, when the school starts back up during the afternoon or whatever, or later hours, or if you have a doctor's appointment, or if you have, other necessities in town, I imagine people like that will get on that bus.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Ulibarri?
I would like our city manager to take a look at the caboose on South Grand. We did all that South Grand, and when you come into town, it's faded out. It looks really bad when you come into town. So maybe you and the street directors or public workers can go see that caboose and see if you can do something with it. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else? Thank you. Next order of business?
City managers report.
Mr. Manager?
So, Mr. Mayor and councilors, you have a copy of my report. I'll just go through these, I won't read them. But the first one is changes to the agenda request form. So I've been working with Sandra on this, and we've changed it a little bit, and we had a meeting with all of our directors and managers and told them that what we really wanted to have this request form serve as would be sort of briefing, so that it would tell people, provide a little bit more information about what was being presented, and maybe some of the pros and cons of things, and also the fiscal impact. And the fiscal impact would be, would say, how is this going to impact our finances, which funds are going to be affected and why. And so sometimes it's really straightforward. It's, we're going to spend this much money because we've got this money for the law enforcement protection fund to buy a truck. Well, that's easy. But sometimes it's, we're going to go and we need to say, let's say we're increasing the fines of something. So how much more money is that going to bring in? We probably explain our methodology a little bit. So part of the idea would be also that this really gets into the second item, which is presentation of time limits, is that the more information we can provide you in writing, so that it's described, not only descriptive but also analytical, that might be able to help you with your questions. Maybe you already addressed some of the questions beforehand, so that's important thing, and I'll try to monitor that to see that we actually do a better job in that area. The presentation on time limits, I think this became obvious to everybody after our last meeting when we went to home. We were kind of joking, would we get home before curfew? And so, the meeting went really long now. So we said, in the agenda it says that presentations will be 10 to 15 minutes. Now there are going to be cases where things cannot be covered in 10 or 15 minutes. But that's incumbent on Cassandra and me to say, well, then we don't want to have 3 meetings like we did last time, that all are extensive meetings. And so we'll try to do that. We'll try to, by providing more better information in written form, be able to try to keep these meetings at 10 or 15 minutes or close to 10 or 15 minutes. And of course, sometimes they'll go over, and sometimes they'll go over because you all have questions.
Can I just interrupt on that? Years before, the presentations were also limited to, they had to be germane to the agenda. So if the presentation had anything to do with an agenda item, we would allow the presentation to occur. So in other words, if, for example, tonight, the rate adjustment and rate study, there isn't an, I don't believe there's an item on the agenda that would, that's germane to the presentation. So that's also something that we might want to consider or, think about. But, and I do enjoy the presentations, and I do respect the staff's time that they take to put the presentations together. But I simply feel for not so much my time. I can stay here and listen to the presentations, but when we're dealing with the listening public or a viewing public, I think it's very important to consider the length of the meeting. So,
we could go in that direction. I like this meeting today on the gas increases. It's kind of an opportunity to inform you all about items like the, gas prices are going to go up, and so that you're not caught flat-footed when you get complaints from the
Right.
public, and so the public also is aware of these things.
thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
The next item is the COVID and city employees, and we're going to be dealing with that a lot tomorrow, but I just wanted to let you know that we had in our directors meeting down in Castro, met with all of our directors to go over all of the policies, to explain certain things that people may not have understood, like why do we do random testing? We've gone from testing so many people on a weekly basis to doing things weekly, and sometimes people get upset about that when going to weekly and doing it randomly, because they got tested 3 times in a row. And if you do it randomly and you're testing 1/3 of your people, 1/3 the first time, your chances are 1 in 3. If your chances of getting called 2 times in a row are now 1 in 9, chances of getting caught 3 times is 1 in 27. But that was, we were following the direction of the Department of Health people, and they said this is a much more effective way of doing testing, and so we deferred to the experts on that. And but we also talked about all the kinds of steps that we could do, and we've implemented a lot of them, about reducing the number of people that are in offices, having more people work from home. They're working in offices staggering. One day it's this person, another day it's another person. And finally we talked about Thanksgiving's coming up. And some people are going to travel. And when they travel, they have to know that that means that they're going to have, with very few exceptions, they're going to have to quarantine 14 days when they come back. Now, for some people, that's not a big deal because they can work from home. Maybe they're already working from home. For other people, that's a real problem. So for police officers, for some of our utility workers, they're out in the field, and so we're trying to get the word out to them what this means and what the implications are for you as an employee about coming back to work. This next item is just a follow-up on the MyCivic 311. Everybody's kind of excited about it. Mr. Hendrickson did a presentation to all of our directors about this and sent out information about how you can get trained. We think it's very intuitive. At least he tells us it's very intuitive and very easy to use. But we're trying to be prepared so that when we roll it out on January 1st, that people are ready to use it. And then we're going to have to train not only our staff but also city residents. and you've got a complaint about the pothole, you've got a complaint about whatever, your trash didn't get picked up. How do you use this and how do we use it to make sure that, so that we can track activity and see how fast things are getting taken care of. So it's going to be a ramp up as people learn how to use the thing and we learn how to analyze it. We are trying to be ahead of the curve on that. I put this CARES money update. I've been thinking about it for quite a while, and I had asked Jesus Paquera last week or 10 days ago or so that I needed to see a spreadsheet where we were on this, and so happened that Councilman Toya sent me an email this morning that said, I'd like an accounting of the CARES Act money. And so what I try to do in very short form here is to remind everybody, so how much did we get? And this is not the money that we got this does not include the money that we got to help businesses. We got $2.4 million, and to date, we spent $1.1 million, which leaves a balance of $1.3 million. Now, these are all rounded numbers, obviously. So there are a lot of projects that we want to do that we don't have costs on. We've included them on my list, but we'll add them on later. So one of the things, for example, that we want to do is to improve our infrastructure in this very room, so that we can, in fact, do some distance stuff. So maybe we have a smart board. If I don't know if any of you ever actually watched our YouTube feed. It's not very good. And, I don't know that I subscribe to it, but I usually don't watch it except because I was sick. I watched it, and I said, we've got to do a better job here. And so Kenny we're working with Kenny, is looking at what do we need to do to be able to improve our product. And so first of all, it's not just questions of cameras and smart boards and stuff. We don't have enough, our electrical's not sufficient, so we've got to upgrade some things. So that's something that and it's something that's obviously COVID eligible, because we're allowing the public to stay informed without having to come in contact with each other, not have a lot of people here in the room. So, but there's a lot of things on here that's on my list that, I just met with Jesus on. I said, he's going to be in contact with DFA. I want to make sure that all of those things are eligible before we go out, because one of the things is we've got, DFA has made clear that we can use the money to backfill our budget for firefighters and policemen. And we will spend all of the money, but I don't want to end up with a situation where they say, well, that was fine, but you spent some money on police bicycles, and how do you justify that using COVID money? So we're going to do that. We're going to do that analysis. We're going to be in contact with DFA. But as of right now, we have 1.3 million. But we could actually go in and spend the whole thing on police and fire salaries, and then use the money that's freed up from the general fund to do these other things. Money, as you like to say in economics, money's fungible. So,
Yeah. Thank you.
And then I think this gets to the last thing is Councilor Rodriguez's formats issue on how do we meet. And Scott, Aaron, and I discussed this, and I've discussed it also with our city clerk, and so we've all had some inputs on it. What we want to do is put this on the agenda for the next meeting, and Scott will present some options for everybody. A, B, C, D, I don't know how many, and the pros and cons with each of them, and what's going to be required. Will our technology allow us to do this? Currently, it doesn't allow us to have some people in the room and normal, in a kind of traditional format, and then some people online. But maybe with the changes that we're talking about, with updating our technology, we can do that. Or, maybe it's, we can have some people here, but everybody's going to be on their laptop, whether you're at home or someplace else. We're going to go through those options to you, with you next time.
Can I also recommend that we not reinvent the wheel, that we talk to the county, for example? They have a pretty good system. a lot of state agencies are not allowing employees to conduct business in person anymore. The majority of them have a stipulation in a policy. A lot of federal agencies do not allow people have in-person meetings, but New Mexico Highlands has a system that they use for their board regents meetings, and the county has a system that they use for their meetings. So it'll require us to do some planning and making a lot of stuff available prior to the meetings, those types of things. But I think, unfortunately, we're caught in this dilemma to where it's a matter of time where probably municipal league and all those people get involved and say, we're no longer allowing municipalities or whatever to meet in person. So we're at sort of a place where we need to make a decision, or at least to increase our options.
I think we're the outlier.
Yeah.
The municipal league, I think a lot of their meetings, they're all on Zoom. You know, it's funny, I mean, and the evolution was they first started off was they were all on, it was a conference call. They didn't know how to use Zoom either. Then they learned how to do it, and they've gotten better at it, and I think there's a learning curve, but we'll go through some of our options next time we will survey other places.
The other thing is that the state agencies have now gone to Cisco WebEx. They're not allowing Zoom anymore. And I think it has stuff to do with privacy. And I guess WebEx is better at protecting privacy and so forth. So there are options out there. I've used WebEx and I prefer it over Zoom or the other formats, but.
The Vegas has had a week-long conference and it's always using WebEx.
Yeah.
And there's still going on.
Okay.
But, then there's cost considerations too, because we already have the Google Suite.
And thank you for your report, and thank you for the Friday updates. They're very helpful, to us too. So, next order of business.
Mr. Mayor, I just had one
Yes.
question on the city manager report.
Go ahead.
Or comment, I don't know. I think my Civic now with, the way things are going and less community contact, I think that would be able to be covered under CARES Act also. I mean,
Yeah, I think that's a
Suggestion.
That's a good suggestion. We've discussed that.
Okay.
And so this, my list that I have, and I shared with Councilman Toya, is changing. It's dynamic. As we think, well, this one's not this questionable, but we know there, in my Civic, there's no doubt. I think that we can use CARES money for that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Presentations not to exceed 10 to 15 minutes per person. We have one presentation tonight, and that's by Utilities Director Maria Dilbery, reporting on fiscal year 2021 gas rate adjustment.
Thank you. You can.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes.
Hi.
You guys could just make sure you just had this discussion.
Good evening, Mayor, Councilors.
Good morning.
Manager.
Good evening.
I'm here with our gas manager, Kenny Lucero, and we're going to talk about the gas rate adjustment that is occurring. Kenny's going to talk about the three components of the cost of gas and how they are, if any, how they are changing. Go ahead, Kenny.
Okay, the first one is the cost of natural gas. The cost includes the fuel and the delivery charges. Annually, on October, ZIA provides a letter to the city documenting any changes in market prices that are being passed on to the city of Las Vegas. This pass-through cost to our natural gas customers. Cost of gas increased from $3.07 to $3.50 per 1,000 cubic feet of gas. So that increase was about 43 cents.
Correct.
The second one is the cost of service. That includes the cost of operating and maintaining the city-owned transmission line and distribution system. The cost is adjusted annually based on the CPI. This year, it was
What is the
increased-
CPI?
Consumer price index.
Okay. Sorry.
It's inflation. It's measured.
No, I know, but for the listening public, thanks.
This year it was increased by 1.7%. increased from $3.47 to $3.50 per MCF, which is about 6 cents.
What is MCF?
1,000 cubic feet of gas.
Okay.
The monthly service charge, that's always a fixed amount, which is $10. That's always stays the same.
Okay.
Zia, every year it's an increase or a decrease. So if they decrease it next year, we give that to our customers. We decrease the amount to our customers.
So the letter that everybody's received and that the community is receiving also shows a little bit of a history. We like to show how the prices have gone up or down over the years. And currently, this one will increase the average monthly bill from $42.70 to about $45.15. And the average is 5 MCFs. That's taken throughout the entire year, and then we average it out, which would average 5 MCF. So it will increase a monthly bill by $2.45. I did want to do a cost comparison this year because this was a question that was asked by customers. How does Las Vegas fit with other communities? So a per MCF rate is $8.54. And this was as of August, so it's not the new rate. It was the rate as of August. $3.07 of it was the cost of natural gas. $3.47 of it was the cost of service. And then $2 of it is the prorated portion of the monthly service charge. So that comes out to $8.54 per MCF or per 1,000 cubic feet for a customer in Las Vegas. Albuquerque is $12.74, and the average across the United States is $18.22. So this letter that you received is going out to customers. It'll be in the bills. It'll be on the city's website. We'll make it available on social media. We'll do everything we can to get it out to the customers.
And I'd like to, I'll be with you, Mr. Olivetti. I'd just like to point out that a lot of the cost is uncontrollable to us. So it's not our desire, it's not the city's desire to say, hey, let's go up $2.35. It's really based on the cost of the provider to us. And so as that happens, then we have to pass on the cost to the consumer. But I'd like everybody to know that it isn't our desire as a council to say, we're going to go up at this time of year because that's when it hits people the hardest or whatever. It's just that that's the cost that we pay for the provider that charges us per MCF.
So this change does happen in conjunction with the change on the city. So Zia is raising our prices effective for, I think it was October's bills, which we receive in November. So it takes effect for the customer at the exact same time as it takes effect for the community.
And just for the record, Zia Natural Gas is our supplier. They're the ones who sell us gas. Okay. Mr.
And
Ulibarri?
all the calculations are done per city ordinance, by the way. So everything we do is based on city ordinance.
Mr. Ulibarri?
You answered the question.
Oh, okay, thank you. And everyone's getting this notice?
Yes.
And when do the rate increase take effect?
They will take effect in November for October's bills.
Okay, so their November bill, you should see an increase in
Yes.
charges. Dr. Rodriguez?
Just a question. Would you consider maybe putting that information also in this letter? The fact that, who's our supplier, you said?
Zia?
Zia. Because, okay, you do say that, okay, has informed the city. Okay, what I would do is maybe bold it, because people need to know that.
Okay.
And they tend to miss it when you send these type of letters out. The fact that, and then the first thing a lot of the residents think is that we're automatic. We're just increasing to make more money to pay off the housing. That's always everything we're increasing is to pay off the settlement of the housing.
Absolutely. That's why we like for customers to give us a call so we can answer
Yeah.
those questions. And again, we will put this on social media, and we will put it on the website, and I'll make sure that we're very clear that it's based on the supplier's increase.
Zia's natural gas
And
increase.
I did receive some information that if gas prices do go down, and this didn't come from Zia, this just comes historically, Zia has also reduced prices or increased prices in the middle of the fiscal year. So it's possible if something happens with the gas prices countrywide, that Zia could come back and lower the prices. And as soon as they lower them, we also lower them.
Great, that's good to know.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Mr. Montoya.
Yeah, Maria, those are very good points because years ago, it wasn't that way. Zia, we had a big battle with them back in the days where they were charging us, overcharging us, undercharging us, and then we couldn't make that adjustment for 3 months, like we do now, from the same month to the next month. And then, just for the public's view, I believe PRC oversees them either way.
Yes.
And also, in our city ordinance, I don't think they can do more than 3% per year.
I don't know
If
if
I
they can do
believe-
more than 3%. I am aware that they also have a market price, so when theirs changes, this letter is also based on their market price change.
Yeah.
And we're passed through from them. So when their gas prices go up or down, they pass it through to us. If they make a general change, that does go to PRC, that has to be requested and approved through PRC. And this is just a market price change.
And I like this letter and I like the chart because it explains it pretty well. And it shows a pattern that's been going on. So, thank you and your staff for this. And like the mayor said, you know, we don't never want to increase waters and utilities, gas and so forth, but we have no choice at times. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And I'd like to recognize Kenny for all his hard work and dedication to the city of Las Vegas. Did you retire?
No.
Don't put that in his head.
I know. Well, you can't retire, so.
I worked 14 and a half years for the city when I first left, and I have another 11 years, so I have about 25 years working for the city of Las Vegas, but those are circumstances that I did take some time off, and
Yeah,
that's come I haven't retired, but
well, you can't retire, so.
No.
Thank you.
You have to stay with us. Thank you, Kenny, for all your hard work, and thank you, Maria, and all your group. Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Mr. Mayor, we have a finance report by Mr. Jesus Paqueta.
Okay.
Give us 1 minute.
Welcome, Mr. Vaquera.
Mayor, Councilman, Councilwoman. I'm here to report the revenue expense reports for October for the city. October should be 34%. Your general fund, the revenue is sitting at 36%. That is $3,783,570. Your expenditures is sitting at 30% with $3,646,328, a surplus of $137,242. Your enterprise funds are sitting at 29% with revenue at $4,839,331. Your expenditures are sitting at 24%. Surplus is at $285,832. Your recreation department is sitting right at 30, with your revenues sitting at 119. Your expenditures are also sitting at 30%, with surplus at $4,462. Your lodger's tax, it's got 114% in revenue and 16% in expenditures, with a surplus of $93,198.
Mr. Vaquera, for the record, I'll always ask you this question.
Yes, sir.
Is there anything in this report that you need to make the council aware of? Any anomalies, any shortages, any red flags that you want to bring to our attention?
Nothing as of right now, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Vaquera.
Okay.
Any questions?
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Montoya?
This is more directed to our city manager. Since this COVID and we got the recreation closed, the recreation center, the library and museum, those employees, what are they kind of their duties at the present time, or where they're at, or what are they doing, or they're working from home, or?
So we have, we're working with all of them, and so Donna Castro, our HR director, is working with each of those directors. I had a meeting this week with Wanda Salazar, who is the new community services director, and so we talked about that in some detail. So the museum has been closed for quite a while. They're doing a lot of work in terms of preparation work so that they can do some, it's like an app that they will do that will guide people through the museum. So if you've been to some of these museums that, like, if you ever get a chance to go to Phoenix, they have a music museum, and it's really cool. It takes you place by place, and it explains everything that what you're seeing. So they're working on that kind of thing. The library, some of the staff is working from home, and some are working in the library. So they're doing some organizational stuff. Some of them are working from home, and some of them are just not working from home, and their pay is adjusted, for that. The rec center, they're doing a lot. They're doing a lot of improvements to the center. So they're working on. We ran into a little bit of glitches here, but they're doing some things to improve the physical center, so that when they are able to open back up in 2 weeks or in a month or 3 months, who knows, that we'll have a better rec center. So we are closely monitoring that.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Montoya, just to add this, and for the city manager's purposes, so we were approached today to, actually, Mr. Romero brought it up at the last meeting, is that it would behoove the city to have a position or reassign a position to do contact tracing for the city. So, in other words, so Department of Health is overwhelmed right now. So even if you get a positive test via text or notice by Department of Health, it's highly unlikely they're going to call your neighbor or your sister or whoever you were at in the last, several days to let them know that you were exposed to Mike and he has COVID and whatever. So they're overwhelmed. So a lot of organizations are doing their own contact tracing. So we could reassign an employee to assist with contact tracing. And the way it would work is you have to have a certification. It's I think it's a 2 or 4 hour training. I think it's a 2-hour training.
There's free trainings out there.
Yeah.
They're being provided by some major institutions like Johns Hopkins University,
Right.
School of Public Health, and we are talking about that. Mr.
Okay.
Mayor. And one of the things that will be on the agenda at tomorrow's meeting is how do we enforce this? And so we're actually looking at redeploying some people to help with enforcement activities.
Yep. So we're going to be able to utilize the staff that that normally have a desk job to do some of the work for COVID and enforcement and contact tracing. But that'll be a discussion for us for tomorrow. But I look forward to that discussion. But thanks for bringing that up, Mr. Montoya. And thank you, Mr. Vaquera. Anything else?
That's it.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Next order of business.
Mr. Mayor, we now go to business items. Item 1 is request to publish ordinance 2013, amending the code of the city of Las Vegas by adding a new chapter 290 entitled Weed and Anti-Litter Ordinance by deleting and repealing section 12613.15 by amending section 1212-1.2. Penalty assessment program by amending section 179-9 and by deleting and repealing section 301-6A. We have our city attorney, Scott Aaron.
Thank you, Mr. Aaron.
Yep. Okay, Mayor and Councilors, so this is a ordinance based on some research that I did for the mayor, put together an ordinance that would address litter and weed issues at the same time. I looked at what a number of other municipalities were doing here in New Mexico, including Albuquerque, Santa Fe, have put that together for your consideration. And of course, tonight, we're just asking that we be allowed to publish for this. Happy to take any questions on this particular ordinance.
Mr. Aaron, could you just, for the record, go over some of the assessments and fines associated with littering and the weed ordinance?
Sure. So the reason why there's a number of other parts of the city code which are being amended or repealed and replaced is because this ordinance is meant to gather all of those other places that talked about littering or other types of disposal and try to pull it all into one place so we don't have it scattered all over. If you go to the very last section, which is section 99.
Is that 2015? Or 2016?
It is 20, let me put it up here.
16.
It is 20-13
Okay.
is the weed and anti-litter ordinance.
Okay.
And if we go to the very end, which is section 99, that's going to provide us, let me pull it up here. So section 290-99 creates a minimum fine of $500 for a first offense for someone who's littering. The second or subsequent violation would be $750, and then each third or subsequent violation would be $1,000, and that's in line with the mayor's expressing and certain members of the council as well expressing that we have some major issues here in town of people illegal dumping. Somebody doesn't want a couch, they just go find an alley, or they go find someone's dumpster, or they go out on the west side. I know there's some areas out there, some empty lots, and some areas where lots of dumping has occurred. So this fine is meant to be a preemptive and a prohibitive action initially. Now, the second part of 299, section B, is different, and the reason why it's less is because this is smoking product litter, so this would be cigarette butts, things of that nature. So it's less, but there's still something in there for what we call smoking product litter.
And what's the fine for that?
Initial would be $250. Second offense and each subsequent offense would be $500. And this is really a promotion of trying to keep Las Vegas clean and immaculate, so that as things open up, and they will eventually, that we're preparing now so that when we again have fiestas, when we again have different special events here in town, that we're attracting visitors, we're attracting that outside population to come in, visit Las Vegas, have a good time, eat at our restaurants, buy at our stores, and spend your money here.
But not litter.
But yes, the only thing you can leave is memories, footprints, and
Money.
your cash receipts at our local businesses.
Yeah.
No trash.
Very well. What's the pleasure of the council? Mr. Ray.
Question.
Mr. Montoya?
This ordinance is very good ordinance, and we're making it more strict and the whole works. Where can it be found for the normal resident that wants to look up the ordinance right now? Is it on the website with the city of Las
Well,
Vegas?
that's what we're voting on tonight, is that this will be published.
Oh, yes, I understand
And
that.
so once it gets published at that point, then it will come back to the council. The council will have an opportunity to vote on it, and if the council passes it, then it will be put on our website, and it'll be one of our published ordinances that's published on the city's website, and they can go and look it up there.
So if anybody has any beef with this, they can come to our city council meeting at that time when we're going to approve it, or you're going to have a public meeting before then for these ordinances, and and resolution, there's different ordinances that we're going to impose.
Yeah, public feedback would probably be the best way to do it. Also, just so that they know, and they'll read through this when they go through the ordinance, they'll see that there's a procedure to appeal. If you feel as though there's something that was done that was out of order, you can come and you can appeal it to the city council. And then if you still feel as though you've been wrong and the council has not done you justice, you can go and you can appeal it judicially. So this isn't this wasn't something that was a short-sighted ordinance. We've really tried to think this out and make sure that there's due process built in here. But we also wanted to set up an ordinance here that would hopefully be preemptive, that people would not litter to begin with, because hopefully they realize if they do get caught doing it, there's going to be a price to be paid.
Mr. Mayor?
So, go ahead.
Mr. Mayor, I recommend that, all these owners that have homes that are a nuisance to our community, and read this ordinance, because, this is like the Bible for cleaning up the town, and it's also for a nuisance. It's all for, the big part and the biggest complaint that we always have is sidewalk maintenance and removal, or weeds removal, and that's all in black and white here. Basically, it's up to the individual owner to make sure that those things are done in appropriate time. So I just wanted the business community and our citizens to have an opportunity to review this before we pass it, and see what their concerns are and why it can't be done.
Thank you, Mr. Matar. Mr. Romero?
Scott, on, if you go to 290-30, I don't know if this was a mistake, but it said, we go through the process, there's a hearing, it said, after the said hearing, if removal has not been commenced or prosecuted to the completion with due diligence as required by this written hearing decision, the mayor shall commence removal. But since we're in a governing body and the chief executive officer of the city is the city manager, really the mayor wouldn't be the one that would commence that removal.
We could certainly make that modification if that's the will of council, to have the city manager do it. What I usually try to build into this is that because the mayor's elected and the city manager is not, the mayor has, let's say, a little more, the mayor's in a position to where he can take a look at that. The perception is, the poor city manager, he's not accountable to anybody, so he's just going to drop the hammer on everybody. And what this gives an opportunity is if the city manager has an opinion as though there's an issue, it will be brought to the attention, obviously, of the individual. If the individual feels they've been wronged, they can come to the city council. If that still doesn't satisfy the individual, they can go to the judge. If they're not satisfied with the judicial hearing, then what allows the mayor to do here is to instruct the city manager, go over there, remove those weeds, and then we're going to send that property owner a bill. We could certainly change that to be the city manager, and I think just by default, the city manager would have that authority to do that, act under the power of the mayor. Happy to make that grammatical change, if that's the will of the council.
I just, kind of the structure of the city is that really, it's the governing body. And I know there's that review that if we decide, yes, I don't know why it goes back to the mayor, is kind of my...
Well, at the end of the day, the mayor's the one that's accountable to the voters, so that's the incentive that I've kind of built in by putting it in there. And the other ordinances that I looked at had that mayor in there as well. But like I said, I don't particularly have a dog in the fight, and happy to change it.
The other issue is that I would hate for it to be, any penalty be delayed so that it has to come back to council and the council ratify and all that. So I'd rather have either me or the manager be able to make those decisions as opposed to bringing it back to governing body for every single one, which is going to be voluminous.
I guess my recommendation, Mayor, is could you just make sure that it follows in line with the charter? Because, as we know in the charter is the governing body that makes the decisions, and kind of here we're kind of saying that he has the decision.
Well,
Unless we give the city
yeah, after it's
manager.
gone through city council and after it's gone through the court, then if the person is still found to have been in the wrong, then the mayor can basically give the order, but happy to make it city
But
manager.
wouldn't we just end it at the courts to where the court would?
So if a person's, gets put on notice they gotta cut their weeds, and they believe they've been wrong, they can take it to this body and say, I want to appeal. And if you guys say, well, sorry, we're gonna find against you, you gotta cut your weeds, they can still appeal it to another level, which would be the court. If the court says, sorry, the city council found, and now I'm finding as the judge, you gotta cut your weeds, then at that point, the mayor or the city manager could order the city to go down there and cut the weeds, and then they would put a lien on the property, is what basically we would do.
Mr. Taylor?
So maybe we could just do a quick that says that the mayor and the governing body authorize the city manager to
Yeah.
enforce this rule.
Give authorization,
That would comply with Section 208 of the ordinance in the city charter, where it says, in addition to the ordinance which are required by state law in New Mexico, or specifically provided by this charter, the following matters shall be undertaken by ordinance of the governing body. And then it explains everything else. So it would be in conjunction with what the charter says, if it would be that way. So.
I want to eliminate any delay possible so that it doesn't have to come back and be on the agenda and just, you know what I mean? I want to be able to afford that to move forward and it be done as opposed to bringing every single one to
Well,
the
shouldn't
city
it just
council.
end at the court? I mean, is there a way to just, if the court says, then you clean it, or else? I mean, couldn't we?
Well, once the court says it, then somebody from the city still has to have the authority to order whoever's going to be the city employees to go out there and cut the person's weeds.
Then I think that should be a
That's
city
where it ends,
manager.
Yeah, that's where it ends. yeah.
Because I don't have any authority over the employees.
Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean? Is that?
Yeah, so that's kind of ends, I'm just, that other step is to, now talk to the mayor and see if you could convince him, but yet he hasn't been able to convince all of us that, clean your weeds. I just, that's kind of what I was looking at, and just let him take care of it. We already say to cut your weeds, the court says cut your weeds, I don't think it would be a decision where the city manager would say, no, let's give you a break, because by the time that process takes, the way courts take, they take 2-3 months, and they've already had that chance to.
Yeah,
Just ends up
but
there.
311, they'll be getting it done faster.
Yeah.
But I think there's in other areas on this ordinance that it says that the mayor needs to be changed to city manager.
Okay.
You might want to check it out.
And so, again, I'd just like to stress, as Mr. Montoya did, to the community that take your time and listen to this, because these are hefty fines, and they're hefty fines for littering and for not complying to city ordinances. And this, it's about time. I wanted Las Vegas to be, way up there with as far as enforcement and the cost and penalties for littering, and this is the first step to creating a cleaner community. Mr. Taylor?
Just, I think that the council's made this point on other things. One of the things we need to do is educate the public, and the way you can do that is with signage. And so a friend of mine was just in Silver City, and they have an ordinance like this, and they have signs up in lots of places saying that, littering is prohibited, fine is $500, which depends, something like that. So I think that one of the things we could do is invest a little bit in signage, so that people can't say, even though we'll go on the radio, we'll publicize this in a whole lot of ways, that people are reminded over and over again that you cannot litter.
One last question, Mr. Mayor.
Mhm.
And I didn't find that here, but maybe it's addressed. Big box store. We only have one here, so Walmart. We know how much of a problem Walmart and their plastic bags, and they blow across the street. As a matter of fact, when we had Ward 2 cleanup in Mr. Montoya's ward, there was a lot of trash in that area that belongs to the Frankens that blows in there, and I think one of them belongs to the highway. How can we hold, and within our ordinance, hold those big box stores? There has to be, within your property, you know, that they're keeping, you know, clean, because what's happening is it's, you know, people are littering, they're leaving their bags, you know, the trash, and then it gets blown, and then either us or the county or the community is having to pick that up. How can we address that in this ordinance?
So there's a couple of things. One is that it specifies in here what the responsibilities of business owners are.
Right.
About picking up trash, and I know it blows off their property, picking up trash, and they can't just sweep the trash into the gutter. You know, that's discussed in here. But if we have to make another ordinance, or maybe even add to this, saying that any you know, that the,
If it continues to be a burden or
Yeah,
something,
that they
you know,
could be fined.
continuance, that then we could hold them accountable for.
Are you talking about the little plastic Walmart bags? Are
I'm
you
just saying
talking?
the trash in general from Walmart that blows across the street, 7th Street, all that. I mean, that's kind of where a majority of the trash in that area comes from is, I mean, it's pretty much plastic bags. And, you know, I know some people open their boxes and just leave their trash there and it gets blown. So how do we hold those big box stores accountable to doing their part? You know, I know they do a sweeper, but they're not doing it as often as they should, or, you know, cleaning up and doing their part.
Yeah, if they have shoppers that are buying products, leaving the store and then throwing trash into like the Walmart parking lot, we're gonna have to look at and have some discussion about how to hold those customers accountable. I'm not sure, I mean, it's gonna be tough to hold Walmart accountable, and the reason why is because unfortunately Walmart's not the one leaving the trash, it's people leaving the trash. So we have to sit down and take a look at that, because, I mean, once the person buys the product and walks out the doors, it's tough to hold Walmart. Now, if it was something that from their garden centers, plastic or something that was blowing,
And that does
that's,
happen
I
too,
mean,
'cause they have
Walmart
the-
obviously has an
They
obligation.
have the
there.
cardboard in the back that's something.
Sure,
too.
yeah, Walmart does have some obligation for some of the stuff that's on their property, but in terms of people walking outside and eating the candy bar and throwing the trash on the ground and blowing across the street, you're gonna have some challenges to holding Walmart accountable for that if it's somebody else's act. But we could certainly look into what the
Would you
options are.
recommend maybe separate, addressing that separate?
well, there's also, the county passed, before COVID started, they passed a bill to prohibit the use of plastic shopping bags in the county. So that's something that we might have to look forward to. And then, because of COVID, they weren't allowing you to bring your own bags from home.
Right.
So they reverted back to this temporarily, but it's something that we might want to look at and, you know, as a separate ordinance, but also look at, you know, the possibility of and litter is a person problem. You know, and I know that I picked up trash a bunch of times across from Walmart. And it's not only them, Walgreens, Lowe's, you know, all those big businesses. And it's really people who take the stuff out of their bag or battery, or to throw the stuff on the, you know, AutoZone, for example. It's another business, you know. But anyway, I think we could look at something eventually about their responsibility to keeping the community clean.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
My recommendation for the Walmart issue would be that work it out in the ordinance and talk to Walmart personnel about putting in, and the DOT, of course, because I don't know if that fence, 4-foot fence along the roadway of Highway 518 belongs to the highway or it belongs to the Walmart.
It's highway.
I think it's highway, if I recall. Yeah, it's been a while. But anyway, maybe we can ask them to increase the height to 6 feet instead, so that way all that trash stays on that side, and then they'll have to go and pick it up. Because you know, if I was the Franklin Company, I mean, I would be pissed off. But it doesn't even stop there. It goes down Collins, Chico, all the way down to the housing. You'll see it on Collins along the fence line. And it's not the housing's trash, it's just trash that blows down from those shopping centers. And part of the reason is the trash bins that are open back there. But that's been taken care of. But I think that if we can work maybe with the DOT
on putting a higher fence there, I think a lot of that trash might stay there.
Or with Walmart to erect a
Yeah.
retaining fence on their property,
All right.
you know, so that it doesn't blow all over.
So maybe that's something for code enforcement to open the door on.
There's no shortage of wind either in our town, so it carries over. All right, thank you. Anybody else? What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I request that we move forward with this publication of ordinance number 2013.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero, by Mr. Montoya, second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
point of order, with the change that Mr. Romero wanted about the mayor and city managers.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Cassandra?
Councilor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilor Romero?
Yes.
Councilor Montoya?
Yes.
Councilor Olivari Junior?
Yes.
I have a motion by Councilor Montoya, second by Councilor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carried.
Thank you. Next order of business?
Request to publish ordinance 20-14, amending the code of the city of Las Vegas by adding a new chapter 330 entitled Riverwalk and Park Ordinance. Mr. Scarneri?
And again, Mayor and Council, was fortunate enough to find some other municipalities in New Mexico and southwest Colorado that are dealing with some of the same issues we're dealing with. They have kind of green belt areas, kind of like a river walk, and they have parks where people are taking advantage of using those public spaces in an area that was never intended by the municipality. And so I've put together something here that's a riverwalk and a park ordinance, and what it's intended to do is to protect our parks and our riverwalk from that overuse and from uses that are not intended by the municipality. It also has some environmental protections built in because, for instance, the Riverwalk area, as everybody knows, was just recently cleaned up. It had some severe issues with human waste and needles. And so this is intended to prevent that. It's also intended as well to be meant and applied to our parks. So we're going to have some consistency with between our parks and our Riverwalk area. Our Riverwalk area is kind of being treated as a park, because at this point, I guess the intention of the municipality, from what I've heard from the city council, is we want to encourage our citizens to use that area, but also to use it appropriately. No camping, no fires, no trash dumping, similar to what we would have at any of our other city parks. And then so there's obviously a penalty built in here where people who violate this would be guilty of criminal trespass, and if you're caught being guilty more than one time, that the city manager has the ability to bar you from any city park or the Riverwalk for a period not to exceed 1 year. And that particularly was meant at people who are camping out or using the Riverwalk or parks in an overnight fashion. I know this is a lot to read through in a short period of time here, but that's the general gist of what's going on here. There are also, like I said, protections. There's some littering type language in here to prevent people from littering in our parks, in our and in our Riverwalk areas. I mean, obviously, we have receptacles, I know, from my use of the parks, where it's appropriate for people to litter, but what we don't want people doing is dropping off oil, tires, that kind of stuff. It's not to be used for that. So this really tries to narrowly tailor some restrictions to our parks and our Riverwalk that are appropriate and that are based on the kind of use of those areas that the city's trying to promote.
Very well. Any comments, questions, concerns, Mr. Montoya?
Mr. Mayor, first of all, I would like to thank Mr. Scott for all the work he's doing on this ordinance. It's a long time coming. I know it's not easy. My question is fireworks. Those aren't included on here. And is there a reasoning for that, or?
There's not a particular reason for that, but I have no problem with adding that in.
Okay.
That kind of goes along with the fire restrictions, and I think it would be appropriate to add in fireworks.
Okay. And I say, Mr. Mayor, that our friends over at the Gallinas River are going to be very happy with this ordinance, and everybody that utilizes the parks they're gonna be happy with this ordinance, because we're gonna keep it clean,
Yes.
and people can go visit and have an enjoyable time. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Montoya. Ms. Rodriguez?
Might we consider, under the penalty stage, a dollar amount? Because people who do this and then you borrow from the park, how are you going to track that? I mean, there's nobody going to be able to, nobody's going to oversee whether this person violated it and then can no longer have usage of the Riverwalk. People will go there anyway, and I'm not sure how you would enforce that.
They're going to have a tattoo on their forehead?
Well, a couple of things. So under...
Money always seems to affect people. If I have to pay a fine, you know, that's frustrating. I have to pay the fine, so I reconsider doing it.
Sure. Well, a couple of things. So in the penalty, the penalty section in Part B there, it makes a provision that people can be fined according to the penalty assessment program, which we were changing regarding the weed and anti-littering ordinance that we've got here.
Okay.
So there is a civil fine built into that. The other thing is that in addressing the homelessness in the Riverwalk area, I was particularly surprised and impressed at how much our local Las Vegas Police Department knows about the folks that are camping down there. They know who they are. So my feeling is if it's a police officer that's going and citing them for criminal trespass, our police department's fairly knowledgeable about who's there and how long they've been there and where they were from and whether they were local, whether they came in from somewhere else.
Okay.
So I'm kind of relying on, and I guess assuming that our police department's going to continue to kind of have those relationships and have that understanding of who's down there and what they're doing. So.
Thank you. What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor, I request that we move forward and publish ordinance number 20-14 to include no fireworks in our parks.
Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Montoya. A second, please.
Second.
Second by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Divari Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Montoya, a second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Next order of business is request to publish ordinance 20-15, amending the administration of government code in section 14-1 through 14-13. Mr. Aaron?
Okay, Mayor and Council, this is an attempt to rectify those particular ordinances that exist now that are not consistent with the city charter. For instance, the ordinances state that the mayor's term shall be 2 years. Obviously, that's inconsistent with the charter. And there were some other information there regarding the salaries paid to the councilors and whatnot. So I've gone through and I've tried to update this, and really what this is meant to do is kind of be a Band-Aid to update the ordinances until we can get a new city charter through the charter committee, and then get the residents to vote. So that's what this is. I had, one of my other suggestions is that some of this obviously goes into some detail. I also substituted the word wards for districts, just to go in line with updating some of the language. I know that we've typically referred to them as wards. That's one of the trends is that municipalities are getting away from that particular terminology and moving into districts. And I also found some places in our other city documents that refer to districts. So I'm trying to kind of clarify and tighten up the definitions a little bit there. However, there also is an option here to even simplify some of this further. Of course, leave it up to the desire of the council to just refer back to the charter and say, you know, when a vacancy is going to be filled, the vacancy will be filled pursuant to the charter, rather than trying to spell it all out. What exists now is it's really someone's tried to gone through and spell it out with the ordinances, rather than just point it back to the charter and say, these issues will be resolved pursuant to the charter. So I'll leave it kind of at the pleasure of the council on how we want to do that, but
Any comments?
Mr. Mayor, yeah, I agree with that, Mr. Mayor, and I met with Scott on it. The other thing that was corrected on this document is that it had 1 meeting per month versus 2 meetings, and that has also been corrected on further on down the line, on the last page, I think it is, on 14-7 on meetings.
the other thing I included, just so that you guys know, in the very last provision of this ordinance, 14-10, makes a provision that if anything in this ordinance, this proposed ordinance, is not consistent with the city charter, that the city charter shall control. So the goal here was to try to override the charter in any way, but to try to correct, number one, what was in the current ordinance that's currently listed on the webpage. But like I said, I'm happy to scale back some of this stuff if the council would just prefer for the language to say, this will be handled pursuant to the city charter.
Makes sense. Ms. Rodriguez?
Much of, in looking at all of this pretty much is already in the charter, so why would you even need an ordinance if it's already in the charter?
Well, that's a good question. That's probably the best thing to do, is just point it back to the charter. Right now, it's spelled out in quite a bit of detail, but the problem is those details change. How much city councilors make, that changes. Certain small things will change over time. So I agree with you. I think pointing it back to the city charter is probably the most efficient way to handle it. So I'm happy to redraft this in such a way that it takes out a lot of the language and points back to the city charter. I just didn't know what the council's pleasure would be, but happy to do that if we want to set this one aside for now.
That makes sense. And I think, I know you're bringing several ordinances up here, but thank you for updating them. But a lot of the ordinances need to match or at least default to the charter when necessary. Because if we have different ordinances and the charter is different, then there's some liability for the city. So I think if all our ordinances just said, or as defined in the city charter.
And Mr. Mayor, just a point of clarification, it's included on section 2.08 of the ordinances
Right.
of the city charter, and you have like 12 different bullet points why this is done.
Right, but I'm saying any of our ordinances, besides the one that are in front of us tonight, maybe always default to the city charter.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I don't see no problem with this. I mean, I know Mr. Aaron did work on it, and he does, it does specify in here that if there's any discrepancy, the charter would supersede pretty much. I just want to thank Scott for doing this because, in my past, in a couple of years, we've had this where the ordinance said one, the charter said another, and then we had rules of procedure that said another. So, so if I wanted to say something and, there was an argument on the other side, we both were right, you know what I mean? So I think, we do have to have an ordinance, and the ordinances that follow the charter. I think this is good. It just, you do both point back to the charter. I'm okay with it the way it is. Instead, if you read through the whole ordinance, it says to go back to the charter. So.
My only thing is that once we got a new charter in place, some of these numbers, the salaries and stuff might be different, and so rather than going through and just keep amending this particular ordinance, what it would do is just cite back that it cites back to the charter and then leave it at that. And that way we wouldn't have to go through and tinker with the ordinance anymore.
On those items that can be changed, like
Right.
salaries.
Right.
Okay. So do we table this to be changed? Wouldn't be.
If that's the pleasure of the council, and I can bring it back, rework.
Rework what?
To rework it, just to reference the charter, and rather than putting in language.
Can we just put in the language and go through with the publication tonight? Not, I mean, not for you to put it in the language right now, but just with the stipulation that we can post it pending those changes that you're gonna make?
Well,
You can do that, but I think it's up to you guys. If you guys want an opportunity to review it before we publish it, then we need to table it.
overall, Mr. Mayor, the charter overrules it.
Right.
He's just trying to compare them so that they're both like
I
the
understand,
same.
yeah.
And on our charter, on that section 2.08, on the ordinance part of it, that and a lot more is included as to what we can do. And all these ones actually fall under that category. All the fines and all this stuff on these ordinances that we're doing, the different ones, all that falls under section 208 of the ordinances on the charter itself that we are allowed to do.
Yep.
That reflects the ordinance. But by all means, the ordinance will supersede this. By all
The
means.
charter will.
The charter, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes,
What's the pleasure of the council?
it's a 208.
Anyone?
I recommend, Mr. Mayor, that we publish ordinance number 2015 as is.
Mr. Romero?
If I could ask Mr. Montoya, maybe you could amend this, but I would say, Mr. Aaron, that maybe the only things that would be changed in the next charter would be maybe the salary and maybe meetings. And I don't know if they will, but maybe on those items, just, put that, where you don't have to spell out the language, you just do as you had mentioned, just, but I don't see any other thing changing. Vacancies, all that, I think all that would stay in the charter.
It very well will probably stay in the charter, whether the language at all will be changed or updated. I don't know, because I don't know what the Charter Commission's going to come up with.
I'll just second it as is, and if we need to change it, the charter changes, I guess we'll.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Thank you. There's a second on the floor by Mr. Romero. Roll call, please.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Counselor Diamante Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Montoya, second by Counselor Romero. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries. Next item on the agenda is the publication of ordinance 20-16, amending the code of the city of Las Vegas by amending the penalty assessment program in section 1251.2 and to add a new section 1.8 to chapter 12, article 6 to be entitled penalty assessment for speeding violations, to be known as 12-6-120. Mr. Mayor?
Hey, Mayor and Council, this is kind of an extension of the mayor's Slow Your Roll program. We had talked about some months back, is basically updating some of our penalties to our penalty assessment program, some of which haven't been increased or updated in a significant period of time. And this sets up a new schedule for speeding. And what it does is it goes through and it amends what's called the penalty assessment program, which is that the last page, which name, what the common offense is, the section violated, and then the penalty that's associated with it.
Thank you for this. Could you clarify what the changes would be for speeding, Mr. Aaron?
Yes. So up to including 10 miles an hour over the speed limit, the penalty assessment would be $35. If you were in some type of a special zone, which would be a school zone, a construction zone, something like that, then the penalty doubles. Same way, if you step up to between 11 and 15 miles an hour, the penalty assessment would be 45. If you're in a special zone, it would be doubled to 90. Between 16 and 20 miles an hour over the posted speed limit, it'd be $80, doubled to 160 if you're in a special zone. From 21 miles an hour to 25 miles an hour over the speed limit would be $120.
Got you. I see it, I saw it now.
Okay.
I think The citizens have been very vocal about speeding, and I think we have been able to, in some cases, I think speed bumps are a deterrent, but I think the low penalties is also something that I'm not in favor of. I happen to think that now, when we're looking at the problem of speeding, I think when people actually know that it's only $35, it's no big deal. I think if it was $100, or $150, I think they'd think twice about their speeding. Whether people might think it's excessive or not, but I think once this impacts our opportunity right now to help control speeding, or at least not control, sorry, to deter speeding. And I happen to think, Mr. Aaron, that the penalty assessments, of course, the double fines, I'm all for it, but I think maybe we should increase those too. Posted school limits, posted residential and all those areas. But I also think this is an opportunity for us to deter people from speeding any further by imposing a heftier fine. And I'm probably going to eat my shoe in front of all of you at some point because I speed, and I will probably get a speeding ticket again, and I will have to pay whatever it is that they're going to charge me. But I happen to think that the assessments are very low. I don't know what the council thinks, but I think it's a good opportunity now to look at them and to this is, I mean, it's coming before us for a reason, and I think it's a good opportunity to take advantage of the fact that we're updating this.
Right.
Mr. Aaron.
Just so you know, Mayor, right now, this reflects the bump up. Right now, for speeding up to 10 miles an hour is currently a $15 fine.
Right.
It's got it bumped to 35. And so
Okay.
just so you know, these include the increase.
Ms. Rodriguez.
I agree. I looked at this and I thought, if we're going to be penalizing a person $500 for littering, speeding is, in my mind, a higher activity and causes problems. It runs people off. I mean, some of the concerns the mayor brought to us last couple of meetings, it runs people off the roads. I thought it was too low. I agree with the mayor that the penalties need to be punitive. I mean, that's the purpose. And when you see $100 or $200, people probably are going to think twice about speeding. You don't really need to speed. Our community is so small, and it doesn't take time, much time to get from one end to the other. So I think it has to be higher, more punitive, I believe.
Mr. Romero and then Mr. Uribarri.
I just had, Mr. Aaron, is there a standard as far as state penalties, like?
I believe there is something in state statute that they have their own
So you can,
version of it.
So I guess what I'm saying is, can we make something more strict, higher than what the state would provide?
Since we're a home rule municipality, we can within our municipality jurisdiction. So, yeah, we're not, I mean, obviously, the argument would be if they become too excessive, then the argument is, you would have an argument that it's
And that's just what I
arbitrary.
wanted to make sure is that, and I understand, I'm in total agreement with the mayor and my colleague
Sure.
here, Dr. Rodriguez, it's just, we do each one of us has had that, oops, I had that one time that I sped or whatever. I mean, we all have, you know what I mean? Everybody goes through it, and at that point, we don't want to make it expensive to that one person that one single time, which, that's ultimately up to the judge to decide. The judge does decide on the penalties, and you got to remember too that he could cut the penalties in half. He has that authority to do that, so I'm in total agreement where, we need to get a handle on speeding around town. We all have it. In every single neighborhood, there's areas that, I don't know, sometimes it feels like we're falling on deaf ears when we try to address these things, and frustration comes about us, and what do we do? Do we, all these, we're looking at different ways to work on that, and I know we'll have a conversation later on personnel on that, but I just want to make sure that, we're not, for those individuals that are, do have that, at one time that they get in trouble and they do speed, and then we don't hurt them either, because there are some, good people that do make the mistakes. The one thing that I would do, and I would suggest too, is that on some of these, that, and I know I brought it up, Mr. Mayor, is, let's also look at the court costs. Because on that, the court costs, there is, the judge has no authority to do away with court costs. Those are mandatory no matter what. So, the court costs, I think, would help out more versus the penalty, because the penalty, if it's your first time, second time, the judge looks at that, could cut the penalty. But this way, the other way around, everybody pays. If you're speeding, you're going to pay. But I guess that's a different discussion.
And I can say that a judge, if you come up in front of the judge and you say, I was in a hurry to go see my dad, he had fallen, whatever, I think the judge would be fair enough to say, okay, well, this is your first, in 10 years, in 15 years. The judge might say, I'll work with you on this, pay court costs, and give you a warning. If you don't get any more tickets within 30 days, you're fine. If you do, you pay both tickets, or whatever the case is. But I think this is a time to look at this as a deterrent, as the cost as a deterrent. And, I think for parents out there who allow their kids to drive, I think it's more punitive if the parent has to pay a higher amount than if it's just $35. It's no big deal, But anyway, Mr. Ulibarri.
Mr. Mayor, did the municipal judge, did you talk to him about the penalty assessments or anything like that?
I didn't. What I did is I took a look at what we're at currently with our penalty assessment program. I looked to see what the state statutes were.
Right.
And then I came up with a schedule, a structure that's still higher than what we have now, obviously, and is higher than what the state has. So I did not speak with the municipal judge, no, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Montoya?
Mr. Mayor, on these penalties, is there anything in here, I didn't see it, as far as can we impose like community service versus paying the fine?
You know what, there is something in here about that.
I didn't see it there on penalties.
It's under the penalty
Or would it be
assessment.
up to the judge at that time or what?
Usually that is at the discretion of the
Judge.
judge.
Okay. And I was gonna say, not having a muffler preventing of noise, $100 fine. And then they're not gonna have money to go fix it.
Too bad they have.
Well, that was one of the things that was brought up, I think, when we had the law enforcement meeting with the mayor, is that we have a lot of vehicles here in Las Vegas that are excessively loud. Some of them have been modified on purpose. Some of them have not been maintained on purpose, or maybe they didn't have the money, you're right. But yeah, that's one of the things in here. Now, to answer your question, there's nothing in here specifically that requires the payment of the fine rather than community service, but we can put in here, if it's the council's pleasure, the ability to direct the judge that the judge may order community service on top of this, but not in lieu of this. So in other words, the judge can't say, well, I'm not going to give you the fine, but you can do community service. The statute can say, the judge in his discretion wants to impose community service, that's fine, but he can't do away with the fine. That would be
And
it.
then the other thing is, going back to what I mentioned on the first one, is maybe, once these things are published, these ordinances and resolutions or ordinances, maybe we could have like a time period when we go into executive session, that somebody can go through each ordinance through that time, and, just reading it out and explaining to people what the ordinance calls for, and what should, what ordinance they should be following. Or have some kind of a program on YouTube or somewhere where people can tune in and find out, the legalities of it, the consequences, and so forth. I mean, because right now, it seems to me like all our ordinances are in a shelf and nobody really goes into them. And those things are very important because that's how we live on a daily basis, and that's what the future of Vegas is.
Yeah, and I think that's a good idea, is to have like 5 talking points on this ordinance.
Yeah.
This is the fine, this is what you'll get, this is what second offense, third, just a few talking points that they can go on our website and say
Yeah.
speeding, or speed control. But noise is another issue, for sure, in the community. But speeding, I would have never guessed there would be that many citizens concerned about speeding. And speed bumps are not the answer to everything. They're a deterrent and stuff, but we'll go broke putting up speed bumps everywhere, as opposed to enforcing them and making it a hefty fine for people to pay. And if they don't want a hefty fine, then they don't speed, in my opinion.
And
Listen to me.
what was the fine for racing before?
For racing.
No, it's 500? Well, you're recommending 500?
Which page are you looking at?
Because we do need a racetrack here in Vegas.
Which one are you looking at?
We
And,
do, it's called
racing
Grand
on-
Avenue.
Racing on streets, $500 fine. It's in the middle of the page on the fines.
Well, it's currently,
I remember we used to go out on 250 and do our racing out there. That was long.
We have racetracks already.
But we didn't utilize our streets, and it's dangerous, and, people, I noticed that a lot of people there on 7th and Legion, I mean, they're waiting to cross the street either way, no matter which way, and people just don't have no courtesy at all. And even on Legion and on 7th Street, besides whether there's a sidewalk there or not, I mean, still the courtesy of allowing somebody with their kids pass through the street before you go is just a courtesy.
But it's a law, you have to allow pedestrians to cross.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a law, but it's, to me, it's always been more of a right thing to do,
So,
What was the answer to that?
it's not currently in our penalty and assessment program, but I'm pulling up the ordinance itself to see if it,
I was just curious as to if it went from
See
3
what
to
it says.
5 or 4 to 5 or... Yeah, because we do have some, not cars, but trucks that are being speeding through town, and somebody's gonna get hurt sooner or later. And there's already been a few accidents there on 7th Street, so...
and I'm telling you that every municipality is dealing with this. Albuquerque just gave an ultimatum to the police chief to come up with a speed enforcement program, or they will. And Santa Fe did the same thing over the summer with noise and speeding. Every municipality is dealing with this. I don't know if it's just the culture of this day, if there are more young people driving. I know it's nice that you have the loudest vehicle on the block, not for your neighbors, but, for kids that age. So motorcycles and bikes that are loud. I don't know what the situation is, but every municipality is dealing with speeding, and ours is not. I get calls almost every single day from somebody requesting a speed bump or to report that there's a lot of speeding. Vegas Drive, Cayo Contenta, all those areas, South Pacific, I guess they're drag racing on South Pacific. On South Grand, there's drag racing going on right now. If you go out there, they're drag racing tonight. The airport, they're drag racing up 7th Street. I mean, I just, the problem is way bigger than we want to admit in this room, but I think that these penalties are too low.
We did not have a penalty in our penalty assessment program listed for racing.
Yeah, okay.
But you have one here.
I did put one in there.
But I understand what you're saying, Mayor, but it also requires enforcement.
Right.
Because I live on a main street, 7th Street, and police are constantly pulling people over there, but I never see them write tickets. So it does require enforcement. I mean, we can put all the ordinances in place, but if the police are not going to enforce it, what good is the ordinances?
Yeah, yes. Mr. Romero, if I can, I think that's one of my, I want to discuss that personnel matters
Okay.
for executive session with that.
Okay. What's the pleasure of the council? Do you want to move forward? Do you want to table it? Do you want to increase the fine? I don't know.
I would like to, I hate to table it because we're talking about a month, right?
Could we do this? Could we post it for public comment? And at the time that we're going to,
We can make the changes, right?
we can make the changes at the time that we, or can you only accept what was presented to the public?
I'm not 100% sure on that answer, but my gut feeling would be that whatever we publish to the community to say, this is what we're considering, that's
Yeah.
what we need to consider.
Yeah, because it would be terrible if we brought it in and said, thank you for your input, but we're increasing the fine.
Now we are looking at another 3 to 4 weeks to get this before the council, but it's also over Thanksgiving weekend and we're in a lockdown and a curfew, so if that gives you any...
I would suggest we table it and increase the penalties.
And if the council can give me their pleasure regarding what they're looking at in terms of penalties, then we can update it and go from there.
I don't mind the penalties the way they are. You know, I mean, they're compatible to other cities, and some of those penalties weren't existing, and I think in comparison to our town, those penalties are actually a little bit high to what people can afford, really. So I think that really, I wouldn't mind the way it is.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Romero?
If I can suggest this, I was just thinking out now. What if we put a second penalty assessment fee schedule that would say 3 or more times? Where, okay, they go first, the first time they fall within this, but now they've gone, 3 times or more, then the penalty assessment will be this. And that would be, of course, the judge would have the records as to, well, this is your 3rd time. How can we do that? And that'll take care of those that are...
Yeah, but the other thing I want to say here, about affordability, if you can't afford a ticket, then you go by the speed limit. The other thing is that this is public endangerment. You are putting someone's life, if you want to look at it as a more criminal event, you are putting someone's life in danger. That you can't stop your car because you're going fast and you slam into a family with 4 kids in there and you're speeding. That's endangering the public. It's a serious offense. If all those attorneys that you see on TV, they go for that person who was speeding, and they go for endangerment of life because you endangered someone's life while you were speeding. And so I just think it's a bigger issue than what we think it is. It's a bigger, if you can't afford $100, then you stay within the speed limit. Mr. Taylor?
One of the things you might consider, I think, is that if somebody's going to 10 miles over the speed limit, so if you're on 7th Street and the speed limit is 20 miles an hour and you're going 30, that might not require a large, but if you're going 40 miles an hour speed limit, when there's an egregious violation, you weren't going down the street not knowing that you were you were at 30. Because when you're going to 50, you know that. And maybe those are the ones that need to really have to be jacked up.
That progressive schedule.
He's right.
That's already reflected here, Mr. Mayor. 10 miles over the speed limit is 35. Over 26 miles or 30 miles an hour, it's 300. So those are already on here. I'm just saying that this is a 50% markup. We're doubling the fine,
So,
the way it is.
but I don't see anything wrong with going to 100%
When was the
markup.
last time they increased the fine?
That I don't know.
Probably in the 70s.
Okay, so go to our market.
I don't know what the other communities like Albuquerque or Santa Fe charge, but it's not $35.
Mr. Mayor? So just one last question is, Scott, so you pretty much have already looked at other communities and this is what there's our...
No, that's not correct. What I did is I looked at what the state
The state.
has, and we are an increase from the state penalties for speeding. So currently ours are about, so to start off at up to 10 miles an hour. Right now ours are at 15. The state's at 25. I marked the proposed one up to 35. So we are, I mean, we are more than doubling it, but we're still over what the state is. I mean, that's why I said it's at the pleasure of the council, but
And I can tell you this, that the fines at the state level, talk about antiquated fines. There's 0 fines, $15 for littering. We're the state that has the worst, and we should be known for being last as far as fines go. That one is antiquated. The state law is antiquated. We have our own city government, and it allows us to go beyond what the state charges. But I happen to believe, and I was trying to bring it up here, but I personally don't think that Santa Fe or Albuquerque is $35, or Taos. I think they're probably talking 50 or whatever. I would go for $100 for 10 miles over the speed limit, and if they can't afford the fine, then they go do community service and help us pick up trash. But that's just me, sorry.
No, I agree with you.
Mr. Ulibarri, did you have a point?
No, sir.
Okay. Well, if the public comments on this, go through and they approve, I happen to think, what if it goes to public comment and everybody comments that we should increase the fine to $100 or $50 or $500 for the first offense? I think this is a good time to look at enforcement and deter some speeding. But these fines aren't going to do it, I'm sorry. $35 is nothing.
Mr. Mayor? I guess just one comment, it's all again going to fall upon, like Councilor Rodriguez said, is the enforcement. I mean, we could have, the largest fines, but if nobody's going to be writing the tickets, so I think an important part in this is going to make sure that we sit down with the chief and let him know where we stand on this, because, we could increase our fines and, if breaks are given, then those fines are worthless, basically.
And it is an opportunity to increase revenues, too. Let that go to law enforcement, or the additional fines go to, or a portion of the speeding that they give out goes to law enforcement. I don't know if it's legal, but,
Mr. Mayor, with that, if public comment says let's increase them, then let's increase them, but with that, let's publish the ordinance and see where it goes, what public comment we get.
is that a motion?
With that, I make a motion to...
Mr. Romero has a motion. I'll entertain a second.
Second, Mr. Mayor?
Second by Mr. Montoya. Roll call, please.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
No,
Counselor Ibarri Jr.?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, a second by Counselor Montoya. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you. Next order of business, please.
Next next order of business is publication of ordinance 20-17, amending the code of the city of Las Vegas by adding a new section 80 to chapter 192 entitled noise control. Mr. Aaron?
Mayor and council, this particular ordinance is based significantly off of what's being done in Silver City right now. We've had a number of community members that went down to Silver City, saw this particular ordinance in action being enforced. It allows us to tailor some of it to specific areas of town where you want to have a little more noise control, maybe around schools, churches, Bridge Street, Plaza, those type of areas. So it certainly allows for that. It is going to, I think, require city police department to perhaps purchase some equipment, not terribly expensive, but certainly some decibel reading equipment so that this can be enforced. It makes provisions where certain times of the day in the week are enforced more than others. Because we all recognize there's some parts of town, like I said, churches, schools, certain business districts, that are going to have a little bit different noise threshold than other areas of the city. So we want to be cognizant of that. And it provides for fines as well. So it's based, like I said, substantially off what was done down in Silver City, and they have had pretty good success. Our feedback from the folks that have gone down there and had seen it in action, had some discussion, they've had they've been successful in enforcing there. So put it before the council for their consideration tonight.
Comments, questions, concerns?
Again, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to emphasize that we need to include our business community on this, because a lot of it's got to do with them on fire alarm systems and so forth. I'm just kind of leery about how we're going to kind of like be the middle person and reach out to them instead of just throwing it on the books when it does pass, and then we start enforcing them and they say, well, what the heck happened here? You know, I don't want it to be a surprise. I just want it to be an educational process that they can help us out with also, because they can alleviate a lot of the calls to the police department and stuff like that. When a car goes off, the alarm has to be turned off within 15 minutes, or a business owner, they need to know that. So I don't know how we're gonna like educate or be transparent about it, but I think that we need to, with this, all these ordinances, we need to be more proactive with our community as far as, you know, the imposing of them and stuff like that.
So that's the purpose for posting them for publication, so that everybody can look at them and say, and if you desire, we could even send it out to the business owners, you know, copy of it saying,
Yeah.
this is a proposed ordinance, you know, please comment on our website or whatever.
Yeah, it'd be good to get an input or some feedback on it like that, because with this pandemic and then with everything that's going on, I mean, it's going to be hard to reach to them unless they get something on the mailbox or at the door. I mean, we're going to lose out on that opportunity.
You don't think they'll take time to look at our website?
I don't know. I think that would be a question to the city manager as to how many people look at our website on a daily basis or monthly basis. I know that like the council meetings, I think probably an average of maybe between 150 and 200 watch it. So that's a real small portion.
I think there's more. As far as Virginia was concerned, I think we had 1,200 viewers.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Oh, well.
And then for that special one that we had, that news conference,
No.
that one had, I think she was telling me like 1,200 or 1,500 viewers.
Oh, okay.
Of course, that was advertised. The radio people told them that there would be a news conference at noon, whatever. But we could do that. We could do the same thing with this. We could just say, we could have a radio ad saying there are these ordinances that are there. Please comment on them, you know. please help us guide us to our decision. This is a very easy ordinance to, all you need is a decibel reader or a cell phone. You can get a decibel reader app and it'll measure the decibels. Go ahead, Mr. Rodriguez.
I wanted to ask a question regarding the daytime hours. Because I think, did you check that? Is it in our charter or there's other ordinances? Because other day hours, I think it starts at 7. And do we want to put some in there regarding like summer hours when we go to daylight saving versus changing? Because it seems like 8 o'clock, I know a lot of construction and building starts around between 6 and 7, especially in the summer. So we may want to rethink those hours. I mean, the 8 p.m. is probably fine, but I was thinking 8 a.m., that seems kind of late in construction, and if you're building.
Yeah, you're right, because they usually start at 6, you know, to beat the heat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, certainly, that's, I mean, again, at the pleasure of the council, I'm happy to amend these. The primary purpose is obviously during dark nighttime hours, that
Right.
the noise level comes down.
And, yeah. But I know it's published somewhere else in one of our, and it might have been a previous ordinance because I was having a problem with a neighbor. And I went and looked it up and it said, I believe it was like 6:37, if I'm not mistaken, but I can't remember where I seen it.
It's, some of the hours will be different, like for instance, in the Riverwalk ordinance that we looked at earlier, there's provisions for what time people can access parks in the
Okay.
Riverwalk. And that's going to change a little bit with daylight hours, but those may dovetail with what you want to do with the noise ordinance, maybe not. Those would certainly be topics for discussion.
And I really think the time change legislation is going to pass this year to keep us on daylight savings.
Oh, that'd be nice.
Great.
It barely missed it last time, and I think Hurdle is doing it again, and I think it's going to pass. So this will be another issue. We'll always be on one time zone, which is fantastic. Mr. Taylor?
Just whether we could publish this and have the people will read it. I mean, I think the people may go to our website, but they don't read ordinances that are 20 pages long.
Yeah.
When I worked for the legislature, they told us, you know, we just go into our reports. The main value of them was that they summarized in one page what the people would read, because they're not going to read, and these were people who that was their job. They're not reading 20 pages, and they're certainly not reading 50-page ordinances. So, if we're going to rely on anything, that I don't know, we have the capacity to get somebody to actually summarize this in one page.
5 talking points for each one.
Yeah.
Fines increase, da-da-da, this is noise, da-da-da, you know, just 5 key points so that it's easy to understand and they don't have to flip through 20 pages of ordinance.
Yeah, and they have issues or they want to learn more and everything, well, then they can go and read the whole thing.
Exactly.
You know, that's,
What's the pleasure of the council?
request to publish ordinance number 2017, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. There's
And,
a motion.
with the amendment of 7 a.m., if that was fine with you on there, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Montoya. A second, please.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Montoya, a second by Counselor Olivari Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you, Cassandra.
Next item of business is resolution number 20-67 for a one-year extension to contract grant agreement number D15952, control number L400397. We have our Public Works Manager, Daniel Goulet.
Mr. Mayor, council members, I'm here seeking approval of resolution 2067 and 2068, which is the co-op grant for West National King Street for a one-year extension due to circumstances that came about, we're probably not gonna be able to spend this money till probably early spring or so. on this one.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, I didn't hear, due to what?
Unforeseen circumstances, I guess you could say, with the contractor that we did have on board. So,
Thank you, Mr. Romero.
Danny, is this for the first portion of, because we've done a couple of,
yeah, so one of the grants,
Is this the first
they
one?
both expire now on the end of December. So I already got an extension on one of them, so the second one that we do receive, this is the first one. But we should have them exhausted by probably summer of next year.
What's the pleasure of the council?
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Ulibarri?
to approve resolution 20-67.
Thank you, Mr. Ulibarri. Second?
No second.
Second by Ms. Rodriguez. Roll call, please.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari Junior?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Olivari Junior, a second by Counselor Rodriguez. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries. The second item is, the next item is Resolution 2068. This is also for a one-year extension to the contract rent agreement D18053, control number L400446. Mr. Goulet?
I did have a question. Sorry, Mr. Goulet.
That's fine.
So by extending this, we don't have a threat of losing the money?
Exactly, yeah.
We don't?
We don't, no.
Only if we extend it?
Yeah,
If we let it
yeah,
lapse, then we
it's
lose
per
it.
DOT recommendations that we gotta follow.
Okay. Thank you. And what's this one for? West National?
This is West National Team, these are the two grants that we actually have for this road.
Okay.
And this will also be exhausted as well, by this next year.
Okay, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Romero?
I make a motion for approval of resolution 20-68 for a one-year contract extension.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
There's a motion on the floor by Mr. Romero, second by Mr. Ulibarri. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Olivari Junior?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, a second by Counselor Olivari Junior. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, before we adjourn, just a quick question. Our reader board, is it still down, or, I mean, till when?
I don't know till when, I know that it's down and that we have some technical problems with it and needs to get fixed. I mean, it is an issue. I'll follow up tomorrow and get you an answer to that.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, on another point, I would just want to thank you for removing that guard railing over there on Legion. It makes that place look a lot cleaner, a lot safer and beautiful. I know it's city property, owned property, and it made a very big improvement. And also, I just wanted to ask, since we have you here, where are we on the pothole patching? What are we doing weekly?
As far as pothole patching, right now, weather permitting, we are going out and trying to fill more of the bigger potholes. And right now, like today, the plant went down, so we weren't able to pick up hot mix today. We'll call again tomorrow, now that we're trying to use as much as the weather as we can to our favor. So we'll call again tomorrow and see if we can go ahead and continue on that as well.
What plant are we utilizing?
The Santa Fe, it's the Associate Asphalt.
Okay,
on that one.
all right, thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr.
I
Ulibarri?
need to, I want to thank you, Daniel, for grading those streets out there, West National, King, Romero, and Lopez. Those all streets are all dirt, they're still dirt streets, so.
Hopefully by
Thank you for
next year,
grading.
those will all be taken care of.
Yeah. I also want to thank you and your crew, Danny, for all the work that you guys do. And I know you had a lot of help with the snow removal from last time
Yeah.
from other departments, but I'd also like to thank you for the job you're doing. Thank you.
Let the employees know.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Gutierrez.
guys.
I appreciate you being here. Mr. Taylor, did you have a comment?
You know, they've done some really big patches, and the one that's really noticeable to me is you go down Railroad Avenue, the underpass that takes you to I-25. That was, they were really bad. They filled it at first with some slag, which they now went and did a big patch yesterday or the day before, and it's much improved. There wasn't a small pothole. They did a big section.
It's good to hear. Thank you so much.
Slowly but surely we'll get where we need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Gutierrez. Appreciate your help. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Next order of business?
Mr. Mayor, do we have a need for executive session?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Make a motion to enter executive session for personnel matters as permitted by section 10-15-1H2 of the New Mexico Open Meetings Act.
Second, Mr. Mayor.
Second by Mr. Montoya. There's a motion by Mr. Romero, second by Mr. Montoya. Roll call, please.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
Counselor Montoya?
Yes.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Counselor Vivadi Jr.?
Yes.
Motion by Counselor Romero, second by Counselor Montoya. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, motion carries.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Romero.
I make a motion to exit executive session and enter regular session. And
second.
also with that, I'd like to note for the record that only those matters specified in the motion for closure were discussed and no action was taken.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor?
Second? Mr. Olivares, second. Roll call, please.
Counselor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Counselor Metoyer?
Yes.
Counselor Olivares Jr.?
Yes.
Counselor Romero?
Yes.
I have a motion by Counselor Romero, a second by Counselor Olivares Jr. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Motion carries.
Make a motion to adjourn?
There's a motion to adjourn by Mr. Olivares, second.
Second, Mr. Mayor?
Second by Mr. Matoya. All in favor?
Yeah, aye.
Aye. The motion carries.